Welcome to our Bulletproof Your Immune System webinar. And so this is a hot topic this time of the year. A lot of people have been hit hard by whatever the flavor of the month or week is. So tonight, we're going to be sharing what the best practices are so that you can get through this flu season or any season and bulletproof your immune system. We're going to start with a question. And this is the question. Actually, it's a story about a question. Albert Einstein had a classroom of students, and it was the second year that he had them. And one of the students asked him a question once they had looked at their test in front of them. And their question to Dr. Einstein was, "It seems like these questions are the same questions we had last year." And Dr. Einstein said, "They may be the same questions, but the answers are different this year." And what he meant was, you're further along in your study, so you know more now. And so your answers are going to be different. Well, when it comes to questions about the immune system, we've been asking the same age-old questions for about 100 years and getting the same age-old answers. And it's time that we answer those questions differently now because we know so much more. So tonight, that's what we're going to be presenting. What's the cutting edge? What does the leading science tell us is really the true way to bulletproof your immune system? And we have called this webinar how to boost your immune system in 21 days in the past, but I really like this idea of bulletproofing your immune system because it doesn't mean that you're never going to get shot at. It means that if you are shot at, you're going to be bulletproofed. So it means that your immune system, it's actually meant to be challenged. We're meant to live in this environment where we're exposed to things that will challenge our immune system. But if you want to bulletproof your immune system, then you've got to do certain things. So tonight we're going to be covering what are the things that you need to start doing, what are the things you need to stop doing, how do you get your best results? And one of the most important concepts we're going to cover tonight is this whole idea that I'm going to be sharing with you 5 pieces tonight that are going to help you to bulletproof your immune system. 4 of those things are important and will influence your immune system, but one of them is what controls your immune system. And I hope you can see that the most important one is the one that's controlling your immune system. The other 4 are the ones that may be going against that one system that should be controlling your immune system to the highest level. So we're actually going to start telling you a little bit more about my story. And some of you already know my story, in fact. And so let's just jump right into what my story is, because it's really, when I think of the picture of a phoenix, it's really this idea of rising up from the ashes. And so some people come to me and they just talk about how they feel like their immune system is just tanked. And like they don't have confidence and they live in fear about their immune system just not being there for them. And I just want people to know that it really is possible to really just recreate that immune system to a strong level. And the reason why I can say this is that my whole experience with being a wellness care provider and a wellness educator started when I was 13 years old. And it started actually about 3 years before this picture. And it started all around my immune system because I had strep throat. I don't know if any of you have ever had strep throat, but I had strep throat. And when having strep throat, if you remember what that was like, if you ever had that, like I could hardly swallow anything. My throat hurt so much. Well, at that time, my dad had gone off to become a chiropractor at chiropractic school. And so he was away for 3 years. But in the very beginning, when he went off, he came back on vacation. And that was when I had strep throat. And then he adjusts me. And within a few minutes, maybe half an hour, I started to feel better and I could swallow more easily. And when I asked my dad, like, how does this work? You give me this crazy adjustment of my neck and then I feel better. He said, we just had to turn the power back on. Now, that was a profound moment because it taught me that my feeling better and getting better was coming from my own body. Whereas we were a conventional family up to that point. We very well would have gone to get go to the pediatrician, get the prescription for penicillin. And if I took that and then I got better, I'd be thinking, oh, it was the medicine that made me better. But instead, I had the experience of it was my body making me better. It was my body healing itself. And so that's what I want to be sharing with you today is there is a way that you can get that immune system to be robust and strong so that you can be healing yourself whenever you encounter any kind of immune challenge. So we've had this interesting last 4 years where 5 years now that our immune system's been challenged in unusual ways. And so the whole conversation has been about being focused on the strength of the virus, and no one's been focused on the strength of the host. And really, that's what this is about, is how do we get every individual person to have a stronger body rather than always being afraid of what the next badass virus is that's going to come to town. And here's the reason why we want to focus on this, because we literally used to be the super species on the planet. We were the species that could go anywhere on the planet and figure out not just how to survive, but how to thrive. And so we would go and we would figure out what do we eat here and how do we survive here and then how do we thrive. And so we really were, and any other species, they have their like particular foods they have to eat in a particular climate. And so they had to just stay there. And once they got that right, they just stayed there. But we had the versatility, the adaptability to be able to go anywhere on the planet. So we used to be the super species on the planet, but now we are the sickest species on the planet. And I really mean this sincerely. There's no other species on the planet that has the amount of chronic illness the way humans do. So the thing is that we're still acting as though we're Superman. We're acting like we can get away with anything, but actually we're in trouble. We are the sickest species on the planet. So we were born superheroes, but we've become weak. And the problem is not that we have a badass virus in town. It's that we are no longer the badasses that we were designed to be. That's the problem. And so we have to change the conversation. And to change that conversation, we have to understand it better. So where does our immune system function come from? Basically, we have to answer the question, where does our health come from? And health experts are all going to agree that there's three components. So certainly, there is the genetics component, gene expression. So that's what we are inheriting from not just our parents, but 3,700 generations back. This amazing double helix that came down through all those generations, and it was carrying this genetic program from healthy, successful human beings. We wouldn't be here if we didn't come from a long line of successful human beings. So in all my studies of genetics, even at the advanced level, what it always comes back to is this: 99.4% of us have the perfect genome to express perfect health as long as we have the right environment over time. So there are, a few genetics that variants that are going to get you into trouble as far as your immune system goes. But that's 0.4, 0.6% of the population. The rest of us actually have what we need. Now, sometimes in our genes, certain disease-producing genes may be dormant and they may get upregulated. Something triggers them to start expressing. Or we may have health-oriented genes that become dormant instead of expressing. And so there's only two things that will either upregulate or downregulate your genes so that they are expressing differently. And those are the environment and lifestyle. And so when we think of environment, what's environment? Well, if you're in LA and they've got the fires going, like you can't hold your breath when you go outside, like you're inhaling toxic, stressful things in the environment. And so there's many, many examples of that. The dramatic examples like being in LA with the fires, but even before the fires, being in LA just with the exhaust, right? You still can't hold your breath when you go outside. So there's many factors in the environment that we may not actually have as much control over as we would like to. But lifestyle is 100% choice. And so lifestyle is where I like to spend my energy with my patients And the people that I want to be training and educating on making the best wellness decisions is in lifestyle, because that actually can upregulate or downregulate genes as well. So that's going to allow us to optimize the genes that we inherited so we can still have the best outcomes with our health. And so when we talk about how the environment can change things, remember our genes haven't changed in 40,000 years. They were set 40,000 years ago in that optimum environment so that we would be able to thrive. And now here we have 3,700 generations later, we've changed that environment dramatically. In fact, we have engineered our environment to be probably the most unhealthy environment that you can think of. And it is affecting our health. And so when we think of how it's affecting our health, well, here's one way that it affects our health. Just look at the trend in obesity. And this is global. This is worldwide. We can see just in the last like 50 years, how much it is there's an inflection point that's happening here all over the world. And so the obesity is trending. This is since 1985. So this is not a genetic factor. Genes don't change that fast. This is environmental and lifestyle. And so we look at this trend, obesity, even with having come through COVID, obesity was one of the things that was linked to severe coronavirus disease, especially in younger folks. For the most part, the young people were not being affected at all by COVID. They could be exposed, they might have something mild, they'd get tested and they'd find it, but they wouldn't even have any symptoms at all. But any of the younger people that actually had trouble with COVID, typically we were going to find that they were obese. And the studies showed that. In this one particular study from China, it showed that. We also know even in New York City, when you were looking at the obesity was the single biggest chronic factor in New York City's hospitalizations as we were watching how this was unfolding. And so when you look on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can see the most obesity per capita is all these different countries. Well, these are all like tiny little countries. And then the only developed country, the only big country is the United States. And we're 12th on the list. And we've got these tiny little island countries pretty much ahead of us. But other than that, we are leading the world in the obesity trends. And what else? Well, diabetes as well. You can see how it's just the inflection point is just going up. So diabetes is not a genetic thing. It's an environmental lifestyle thing. And the most disturbing trend that I've seen was when I ever saw this data from the CDC that said that this was in 2009. They reported that for the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. Now, I know sometimes when you're presenting data, your eyes can kind of glaze over, right? And it's just like, it's too overwhelming. But think about what we're saying here. If you have a child born right now that is, in their 20s or younger, then they actually are in this category here. So I don't know about you, but this is not okay with me. And maybe, it's not your own kids, but maybe you're a grandparent, right? Is it okay with you that your grandchildren are not going to be living as long as you have lived? Is that okay? How about it's your nieces or your nephews or your sisters? Like, well, I just want to make this real. This is people that we know that we're talking about. And this is the most disturbing factor that I came across in all the times I've looked at data. This one was like gobsmacked me. And when we think of the healthcare burden that we have as this continues to evolve and our kids are sicker and sicker, right now, 86% of the $2.6 trillion that are the healthcare burden are going towards obesity. 86%. And I'll tell you what, that $2.6 trillion healthcare burden is even higher now. Like in 2000, it was that. But now it's $4.5 trillion. So it's just going up. When we look at the prevalence of chronic disease in the US, of the 15 leading causes of death in America, 14 of them are chronic illness. One of them is, deaths from accidental causes. but 14 out of 15 are from chronic illness, are completely preventable diseases. And so we are born superheroes, but we have become weak. The problem is not, again, that we have a badass virus coming to town. And now what's the latest badass virus? Oh, I heard it's influenza A, and they, planned for influenza B. They missed it with the vaccines. But I'm going to just tell you that it's not about the strength of the virus. It still has to come back to the strength of the host. What about bird flu? What about measles? Like, this is the narrative that we're talking about, and it still comes back to how do we get individuals stronger? Because we were born to be the superheroes. We were born to just kick the asses of any of these kinds of viruses that we're going to be exposed to. And I just want to show you that we are born with superpowers. These are the superpowers that we have, that we come pre-programmed with, available, pre-designed with. And in our modern world, we're screwing this up. So just check this out. Here's the one that I love the most. Breast milk. It is a superpower that we have. When you think of breast milk, our babies, when they're born, they have leaky gut, which means their linings of their intestines are all open because it was designed for breast milk to be fed in and to get into their body, because the breast milk had so many good things in it that was going to just be exactly what this baby needed. So the babies, until they're 2 years old, they have leaky gut, but it's purposeful because it was designed to get breast milk in. It was not, however, designed for formula or baby food out of a jar. It was designed for breast milk to get in. And then when those babies started to get their teeth, it was when they were getting ready now to start eating on their own, but to eat natural whole foods. And so that gut lining through the breast milk as the first food, it develops, the lining is developing, and we're building a microbiome in that baby. So babies are born with 10% of their cells have some microbiome to it, some what we call the gut microbiome, the healthy bugs, right? So even when a baby's born, it's populated, it has about of all the cells in the body, 10% of all the cells are gut microbiome, and the other 90% are the baby's cells. By the time we die, 10% of our cells are our human cells, and the other 90% is all of the microbiome that we have developed as far as the lining our digestive tracts, all over our skin, in every part of our body. We have microbiome, which is our living in our environment in a healthy way. Isn't that amazing? And so how amazing is breast milk and what it has in it? Well, when a baby breastfeeds, it actually is programming the mother's milk to deliver to that child exactly what it needs that day, as far as the ingredients go. This is an amazing picture here. This is a woman who was pumping because she had extra milk, and the bag on the left is showing her milk on one day, and then that night, her baby had a fever. And so it was exercising its immune system. And as it was nursing through the night, the next day when she pumped the milk, it was yellow because it was filled with the exact ingredients that that baby needed that day to now help it go through whatever was challenging its immune system the night before. It had exactly what it needed. So that baby was programming the mother's milk to deliver that. That's a superpower. Superpower, breast milk. What else? Our gut wall is a superpower. So again, it's designed to be leaky in the newborns because we need to just get all that good breast milk in, and all those ingredients they have to get in. And then we slowly, over time, we're developing that microbiome that is starting to then build it up the lining of the gut. And finally, at 2 years old, we should have no leaky gut. We should have a nice sealed, tight junctions of that gut wall. And that gut wall is amazing because it actually is selective on what it's going to allow in through those tight junctions to actually get into your bloodstream and then to get into your body. So that if you are eating a protein that's not digested yet, that's not supposed to get in. Only when it's broken down into the amino acids, that's what's supposed to allow it to get in. But if we do things that are not keeping our lining of our gut walls strong, and we start to get leaky gut beyond 2 years old, and in the environment that we live in, we're going to be in trouble. So having a healthy gut is essential for our immune system, and it's part of the superpowers that we were designed to have. In fact, they say that 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So we have to pay attention to our gut if we're going to have bulletproof immune systems. So again, it's our culture, it's our modern world that we designed that is making us weak. What are some of the other, some of the other amazing superpowers that we have? T killer cells. T killer cells are the part of our immune system that goes after cancer cells. Superpower. How about fevers? What about fever? Fever is a superpower. Look at it. It heats up our body to make it uninhabitable for certain pathogens that are not the good guys. They're not the good bugs, but it doesn't actually harm us. So we have a fever that's going to harm something that we want to destroy and get out, but it doesn't harm us in the process. In fact, it's impossible to have a fever harm you. People get a little confused when there are seizures from fevers, and those are they're transient and they're not harmful, but they're scary, and they don't happen very often. It actually is impossible for your child to create a fever high enough on its own that's going to cause any kind of damage. Now, if the baby gets dehydrated with a fever, then you're in trouble there. Or if you left a child or a baby in a car on a hot day and their body heated up from just overheating, that's dangerous. But as far as the body creating that fever itself, it's impossible for the body to do that in a way that would harm it. And in fact, there's actually a phrase that informed pediatricians use, which is 103 by 3. That phrase means that every child, by the time it's 3 years old, it's designed to expect to have the experience of 103-degree fever or higher in order to stimulate the coordination of the nervous system and the immune system so that for the rest of their life, the immune system is efficiently functioning. So that's a key window of development that has to happen by 3 years old. Oh my gosh, what parent would not want to know that? Fever is a superpower. We want to let it run its course and just keep that baby hydrated is the key thing there. What else? Vomiting is a superpower. Okay. Sometimes norovirus might be moving through, or any kind of a GI flu might be moving through. That is not fun. Vomiting is not fun, but it is a superpower. And if you think about just the design of our bodies and our amazing immune system, 40,000 years ago, when our ancestors would have been foraging for food, they'd find something, they would smell it first, then they'd taste it, they'd just sample it a little bit. If that tasted okay, then they'd eat it. And for the most part, it was going to be healthy for them. You could actually trust your taste buds and your smell to make sure that what you're eating was going to be good. Nowadays, you can't because we've engineered our food so it's addictive, and that the ingredients that the companies are putting in are going to make sure that it's addictive. So we can't trust our taste buds anymore. We have to actually use the smart part of our brain and read the labels. But if we get back to the design, well, our ancestors, we had this amazing design. And if by chance something did get through that was not going to be good for us, when it hit the stomach, our nervous system would recognize that it's not good, and it would immediately transition into vomit. Get that thing out of here as fast as possible. Superpower. And if somehow the vomiting didn't get it out, or we missed it at that level and it continued through our digestive system, as soon as the body recognized this is not good, boom, we're going to be getting rid of it at the other end as fast as possible. Superpower. Because if our bodies didn't do that, it means that that toxin now is just going to be permeating and getting into all the cells of our body. And that could be lethal to us. And so we have these superpowers that are the way our immune system is designed to work. Again, not always convenient and definitely not always comfortable, but it is that superpower. It's the design that we were meant to have, that we were meant to go through. And so when we talk about bulletproofing the immune system, it means, yes, it does mean you're going to be experiencing some of these things, but that is exactly the way we were designed for. We were designed to then move right through it. Now, if our immune system is not working well and we have a badass virus, what are the implications of us getting weak? If we start to get weak and our immune system is not working, well, dang it, they could just shut the world down again if another badass virus comes along, right? The best thing we came up with when this COVID example comes through is just stay at home and wash your hands, no hugs or high fives, and let's just hope and pray a vaccine comes along. Like that was the best we could do. Come on, team. We didn't just shut a town down or even a state. We shut the world down. But we shut it down because a segment of our population was vulnerable. So let's not at all undervalue that point, that we had people in our population that were vulnerable. The problem is instead of allowing the strong ones to actually stay strong and develop that herd immunity, we just shut everything down. So we actually interfered with our superpowers. So it's time to change the conversation. We need to stop focusing on the strength of the virus and start focusing on the strength of the host. And so when we talk about that, how is it that we did get so weak? Well, one thing we can look at is the number one reason probably is personal responsibility. Who is it that is ultimately responsible for your health? Who is it? Is it your doctor? Are they responsible for your health? Is it your spouse? Are they the ones that are in charge of that? Is it your mom or your parent? Is it your accountant that's telling you how you should be spending your money? I hope not. How about your insurance carrier? Does your insurance determine what choices you make with your health? For some people, they do make their decisions that way. Does my insurance cover this? If it doesn't, they don't do it. Well, you're going to be in trouble because your insurance company's bottom line is not about your health. It is about the health of the company and the stakeholders. So what about the government? Is the government responsible for your health? Who is responsible for your health? Well, the WHO, the World Health Organization, also known affectionately as the WHO, are they responsible for your health? I hope not, because have seen the havoc that is played out. If anybody except for ourselves is responsible for our own health. And the sooner that we get that, the sooner we create that pivot point where we get on the road to bulletproofing our immune system. There's 3 reasons we're going to go through. I'm going to tell you the 3rd reason later because I want to unpack a few more things. But the 2nd reason is we've lowered our expectations of health. We are just tolerating and we are normalizing weak immune systems and we're normalizing chronic disease. We've even changed our definition of health. People talk about health as though it's like a toggle switch. Like today I'm feeling healthy, but last week on Sunday I was feeling so sick. I mean, on Saturday I was feeling healthy, but then on Sunday I felt so sick. And then I was just in bed on Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday I started to feel a little better. And then by Thursday I was healthy again. Like people talk about sick and healthy that way. But the reality is this. It's not just those 2 places that you can live, sick or healthy. No, there's another whole category called the not sick zone. Most people are spending most of their lives in the not sick zone, but they're calling it the healthy zone because the not sick zone is that space where you're not sick, meaning you don't have any diagnosable thing. You're not sick with symptoms, but you're not necessarily robustly healthy. So the not sick zone is also the not healthy zone. And that's really important. There is a difference between sick and not sick. Certainly, sick, you know you're sick. There's some symptoms that are there. Sick is, there's a diagnosis that's there, right? The not sick zone, the undiagnosed zone, there's a difference between that. And so if you're not sick, it doesn't mean that you're healthy. That's the key. We need a better definition for health than just not sick, right? That's the definition most people are using for health is I'm just not sick. But we need a better definition. And sometimes people think that sickness is the opposite of health, but it's not. Sickness is the absence of health. That's the way we need to start thinking about health. So I like a 3-word definition to make it really simple. For healthy, the 3-word definition is optimal cell function. And then the 5-word definition for sick is lack of optimal cell function. Are you with me? Right? It's kind of like lightness and dark. Like we could, we have lights on, that's a thing, light. But if we turn the light off, it's an absence of light. That's what darkness is. It's not a thing. It's an absence of a thing. Sickness is not a thing. It's the absence of a thing. So if you don't like the darkness that you have, you just need to add light. If you don't like the sickness that you have, you just need to add health. And that's the tricky part. So let's look at thinking about it that way is the tricky part because we're so programmed to, when we're sick, to name it. And once we name it, we think it's a thing. And once we think it's a thing, then there's a treatment for that thing. And we go down that whole rabbit hole of what drug do I need to fix this thing? And instead of looking at where do I need to add health here? It's looking in 2 different directions. And your immune system, the way it plays out is it's going to matter how you're thinking about this. So let's look at a better description of how health works. And it's looking at it as a continuum, the illness wellness continuum. So we're all in this health continuum. And when we look at it, you're going to say, okay, where am I right now? So to the left is where you're heading towards early death. So you're losing function and you're moving towards symptoms. And then if it goes so far where you can't fix the symptoms anymore, now it's disability. And now you're even closer to premature death. On the right-hand side, that's moving towards high-level wellness, robustness. But that middle part, that's the not sick zone. That neutral point where there's no discernible illness or wellness. They don't have symptoms, but you're not necessarily robustly healthy. That's the not sick zone right in the middle. So here's the thing. Health is dynamic. It's fluid. It's always changing and it's never static. So everybody, you can place yourself at one point right now on this continuum, but the very next question to ask is, and what direction are you heading? So if right now you have symptoms of any sort, you're already in the yellow part there. And if you don't have symptoms, but there's ways of testing that you have some signs like, oh, I feel okay, but I went to my doctor and they said my blood pressure was high. And they said my blood sugar was high. I feel okay. Well, that's the signs. So you're getting into the pale green moving towards yellow zone. And if you don't do anything about the signs and you keep moving in that wrong direction, then the symptoms start to show up. And then before you know it, you can't even fix the symptoms anymore. You're in the disability. So you can see that there's a direction that you could be moving. And that direction is going to be determined by the sum total of all the decisions and choices that you're making all day long. It's the 10,000 decisions you make all day long that are going to be pushing you in one direction or the other. And so when we add those up, they're either going to be positive, moving you towards high-level wellness, or they're going to be cumulatively negative, pushing you towards an early death. So which way are you moving right now? Mentally, put a point of where you are, and then put a point of which direction are you heading. And if you ask that about yourself, you can come up with an answer. But what about your spouse? Where are they and what direction are they heading? What about your kids? Okay, we saw that the stats are showing us that our kids are moving away from health. They're not living as long as we are. They must be moving in the wrong direction. What are we doing that is pushing them in that direction? And, you could ask your kids to place themselves on this and ask them where would they put themselves? Or even better, ask your kids about where are you and what direction do they want you to be heading? What direction do you want your kids to be heading? And what are you willing to do to get there? Because this is all about taking action. It is all about taking action. The only way to bulletproof your immune system is if you take action and you change the direction you're heading. And if you are living by default, our culture is pushing you towards that early death. So we can see it because in 2009, the CDC told us our kids are moving towards that earlier death much sooner than we are. So let's talk about the difference when we encounter something that is challenging us. Remember that the obesity that we saw was one of the factors that was pushing people towards a bad outcome with COVID, for example. So what it turns out is that obesity was actually making them immunocompromised. Let's talk about what it means to be immunocompromised. What do you need to do to make sure that you are not immunocompromised? What do you need to do to make sure that you are immunocompetent? That's moving in the opposite direction. Immunocompromised towards early death, immunocompetent towards robust health. What do you need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing? We're going to cover all that. But what does it mean? What exactly is immunocompromised? Who is immunocompromised? Now, we talked about that there were a very few percentage of genetic disorders that, yeah, it's going to put you in that immunocompromised category. Like cystic fibrosis. You have cystic fibrosis, you have just like gristle in your lungs, pretty much. And so if you encounter a respiratory virus that your body should have been designed to go through, now you've got cystic fibrosis, you're in more danger. But I will tell you, I know of people, 2 people, in fact, specifically, and I know there are more, but those 2 that I do know that had cystic fibrosis, got COVID and got through it. So it's not necessarily, automatic that just because you have even genetic disorders that you're going to be taken out, right? It's not automatic. There's still things you can do. Now, who else is going to be immunocompromised? Well, people with pre-existing conditions. We saw that with COVID. The people that were being tanked with COVID were the people that already had the comorbidities. They already had the pre-existing conditions. But the problem is they thought that they were managing them with the medications they were on. They thought they were controlling that blood pressure, controlling that blood sugar, and they thought that made them healthy, but it didn't. It just made them not sick. But not sick is not healthy. So they were actually immunocompromised, but they were thinking they were healthy. People that are undergoing treatments like chemotherapy, yes, that is going to put them in a weakened state as far as immunocompromise. So hopefully it's just transitional and you're in it for a short period of time. And even while you're in it, there are things you can be doing that can actually help to give you more robustness. And then the elderly, and I've got a question mark after that because we think of the elderly as people that are, more susceptible, that could be more immunocompromised. But for the most part, somebody that's been making really healthy decisions their whole life, they've got a cumulative robustness that means that when they're elderly, they're still going to be in good shape. The people that are elderly, that are in trouble, are the people that for now, it's been 30 years that they've been making these poor lifestyle choices. For 30 years, they've been heading in the wrong direction. There's a momentum there. And that, it's not just a direction. There's a speed that you're moving, and then there's a momentum to that speed that you're moving. So if the elderly are only more vulnerable because of how long they've been making these poor lifestyle choices. I hope that's clear because I want you to live without fear, to know that you have superpowers. We just need to do the right thing so we can cultivate those superpowers that we were already designed to have. So I've got 2 acorns on the screen here. And so I want you to get this idea. On the screen, you can see the words, you don't get sick, you do sick, right? So the elderly that are robust, it's because they've been doing health for 30 years. The elderly that are immunocompromised, they've been doing sick for 30 years. The people with the pre-existing conditions, they've been doing sick to get them there. And that's what's made them vulnerable. So when we look at these acorns, if you plant an acorn, what are you going to get from it? You're going to get an oak tree from it. Every time you're going to get an oak tree. Is that true? Hang on now. Acorns, do they always turn into oak trees? If I had a couple of acorns right now in my hand and I threw them into the corner of the room over there, how long is it going to take before that turns into an oak tree? No water, no soil. That acorn's never going to turn into an oak tree. Do you see that? So what we should be spending our efforts on is not the fact that a virus absolutely is always going to cause sickness. You don't get sick from being exposed to a virus. What you want to put your effort into is you don't want to be the soil that makes it fertile, that's going to make it grow into a virus that's going to be harmful to you. So you don't get sick, you do sick. And so you want to be making the right decisions that are making you robustly healthy rather than making you fertile ground for viruses to just flourish in. And that comes again to how healthy are you? Are you doing sick or are you doing healthy? So the idea around trying to avoid viruses and germs, you can't avoid them. In fact, right now, we all are being exposed to 10 to the 15th power of variety of viruses, like not a total number of viruses of 10 to the 15th, total 10 to the 15th, total types of viruses we're exposed to all the time. And we're worried about one of them. And we're trying to just like kill off one of them. Meanwhile, we're exposed to them all the time. So our bodies were actually designed to be exposed to them. And in fact, to even get value from them. Germs are everywhere. If you looked at your spouse's mouth under a microscope, you'd see so many germs, you'd probably never kiss them again. But it's all just part of the environment that we're supposed to be exposed to. I had a young mother come up to me and say, my mother-in-law is coming to the house and she's kissing the baby right on the mouth. Like, should I ask her not to do that? And I said, no, you want that baby to develop that microbiome that's coming from your family. And so that's part of the way that baby's going to develop, is to be exposed to their family. So again, just make sure you keep doing your breastfeeding. Make sure you keep keeping them healthy and keeping them robust with every different way that you take care of a baby in a healthy way. So we shouldn't spend energy trying to avoid germs. We should be spending energy on not becoming soil for those germs to proliferate. We should be spending our time cultivating what we need to move in the direction of stronger and to move away from the direction of weaker. So again, there's 5 areas we're going to focus on. 4 of them are going to impact your health and they're going to push you in one direction or the other, but only one of them is the one that controls your health. And so you just want to make sure you don't do things that are pushing you into that weaker stage. So we're going to unpack all of that. Now, I know we're talking about superpowers tonight. And so if you follow Superman at all, you will recognize what kryptonite is. Kryptonite is the thing that stresses Superman. It's the thing that sucks his powers away. And so kryptonite, what does it do to Superman, right? It makes Superman stressed. It stresses Superman. And what is it that is the thing that is our kryptonite? It's bad lifestyle choices that create stress. And so that stress is coming at us in 3 dimensions. So stress is like kryptonite to your superpowers, and that's going to impact your immune system. It's going to create immunocompromise. And so what is it when stress happens? What does it look like? Well, think about stress as getting ready to fight a tiger or to run away from it. So stress response is a fight or flight response. It's an adaptive physiology that is actually designed to help save our life if we are actually encountering a tiger. And so what are the things that we want our body to do if we encounter a tiger? blood pressure is going to go up, heart rate's going to go up, muscle tone, we're going to get more tense. Our digestion is going to slow down because that takes way too much energy. And now is not the time to be having lunch because now is the time you want to avoid being lunch. So reproduction is going to slow down, not the time to make babies right now. We're fighting a tiger. Our serotonin levels will go down, not the time to sleep. Our sensory systems get alert and go up. Fear and anxiety goes up. Insulin sensitivity is downregulated because we want more sugar in the blood because that's fuel for us to use to fight that tiger instantly. And that, of course, means insulin sensitivity goes down, blood sugar is going to go up. We're going to have a decrease in the HDLs and increase in the LDLs. So that's going to flip because we need those LDLs to both make the cortisol, make the stress hormones that are flooding our body, as also we need to use it for repair. Cholesterol is also used to repair wounds. And so we're going to actually increase the cholesterol because we're expecting, hey, this encounter with a tiger, we might get wounded here, so let's be ready. That's why our clotting factors also will go up. And our immune response is going to go down. The reason the immune response goes down is because we're anticipating we're only going to be in this fight for a few minutes, and we want all of our resources to go to fighting or running. We don't want to be slowed down at all by the resources going towards the immune system, which is a very expensive system to run. So we put the immune system in a down-regulated response so we can liberate those resources towards fight or flight. Sympathetic state, we call it sympathetic dominance. And the idea is that in a few minutes, either you don't need your immune system anymore because you've been eaten by the tiger, or you've conquered the tiger, or you've gotten away, and now the immune system is there ready to now take up those resources to maybe be part of the healing process for you if you were wounded. And those stresses, they're coming at us in 3 dimensions. So it's thoughts, toxins, and traumas. It's, how many feel like modern life is unnaturally stressful? We're being bombarded. And it's not just the one-off big events that are stressful of losing a job or losing a loved one or losing a home or like bad things like that. It's the chaos and disorganization and deadlines in between those events that are actually costing us so much energy. Toxins, like maybe we get exposed to a poison now and then, once or twice in our life, but it's the unhealthy foods that we're eating and the pollution we're breathing in. It's the exposures of the low levels over time that are stressful to us. And traumas, yeah, we might have like a fall or a sports injury or a car accident, but it's in between that. The traumas are actually coming from micro traumas, and we're going to unpack this in a moment. So when we were going through COVID, like I recognized how stressful it was, and I knew that we got to keep our frontline workers healthy. So I took some of the research that I knew and I applied it to them understanding, what we're going through. So stress is actually making us more susceptible. This was a study that was done. This is an amazing study actually that was done. What they did is this was back in the early 1990s. They actually took volunteers and they literally put all kinds of cold viruses into their nose, and it included coronaviruses. So people were volunteering to have a coronavirus shoved right up their nose, and along with rhinoviruses, adenoviruses, like the whole spectrum of different common cold viruses, and coronavirus is one of those. It's actually typically we've already been exposed to those, and usually it shows up as a cold. Well, what was interesting about this study is not everyone got sick. Even though the virus has been put directly into their nose, not everyone got sick. And it turned out that the more stress you had in your life, the more likely you were to get sick. I mean, no surprise there, right? So psychological stress was actually a better predictor of sickness than any other lifestyle factor. And they included smoking, alcohol consumption, lack of exercise, poor diet, poor sleep. It was the psychological stress that was the best predictor. And in this study, when I said not everyone got sick, 1 in 4 did not even get sick. 25% of the people did not even get sick. And it was because they were managing their stress better. So managing stress is an important piece here. Yeah, up to 25% did not get sick, even when the virus was stuffed into their nose. So talking about the frontline workers, man, they were stressed. And so I just decided, I created a policy right when COVID was happening that I was going to offer, for a period of time, I was going to offer free care to frontline health workers. So they came in. And one woman specifically, what she commented on the most was that she could see that as she was getting adjusted, she was able to go back to work, and her levels of stress, even though the stresses around her were still there, her experience of that stress just dropped right down. And she literally was having anxiety. The anxiety went away. And that was Annie that had that experience. Tammy was a nurse. She had back pain, and she was working so hard. And so we were able to help her. Her back pain went away. She got stronger. And so she was able to, again, just stay in that frontline position that was so important to help the entire community. Now, Lori, she was getting neck pain because she had all these awkward postures with staying away from people, but still having the PPE equipment on, and still having to do her job with needles and drawing blood and all of that. And so she was having neck pain because of the weird positioning from the PPE equipment. And so we were actually able to help her just adapt to that, so she was able to be pain-free and still do her work. So again, we just need to take care of our community, don't we? So what are the things that we train these frontline health workers to do? What are the things that you need to learn how to do, stop doing, and start doing? That's what we're going to cover now. As far as your mindset goes, you want to stop limited thinking, worry, and holding grudges. So they actually had a study. It was actually one where they found that they hooked up people's bodies, their brains, to electrodes, and they showed them things that were stressful to them. And sure enough, it showed that when they looked at their blood work, and they looked at their brain waves, and they looked at the hormones, the stress hormones flooding their body, sure enough, they could see that it was affecting their immune system. And they found that, worrying about the past, worrying about the future, holding grudges from the past, resentments, all of these things actually affected the immune system. And there's a great book that was written by Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he is a cellular biologist. He wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, and he literally goes into exactly what's happening when you have limited thinking, when you're thinking, oh no, I'm afraid of that virus, just thinking that and not knowing that your body has all these superpowers and just being in fear mode. He shows you exactly how that then rolls out into your chemistry in your body and how that affects your immune system. But he also shows that humans have this amazing prefrontal cortex. That's where our humanity lives, right in the front of our brain, different from any other animal. That prefrontal cortex allows us to change what we're thinking. We can voluntarily change what we're thinking. And when we do, it changes our biochemistry in our body, and it affects our immune system. So we need to stop our limited thinking, stop worrying, stop holding grudges, and we need to start vision casting, actually imagining what you want instead of worrying about what you don't want, because it will affect your biochemistry differently. So really having a vivid image of what you want, to the point where you can just about feel what it's like to have that literally changes the biochemistry in your body, and it ramps up your immune system. Alignment, living in alignment. Now, okay, that's one of my favorite words as a chiropractor, but when it comes to mindset, alignment means living with your values, understanding what values are important to you, and creating your life so you can live with those values, and you're not forced to compromise those values from agreeing to things that you disagree with. So living in alignment is key. And then gratitude. When they put those electrodes on the brains of people and they looked at how it affected their immune systems, when they then asked them to think of what they're grateful for, they tried all different types of positive mental thoughts. But when they went to gratitude, that one was the most effective at turning the stress switch off. So sometimes it's good to just have a couple of things that you just know that you're always grateful for, just kind of in your back pocket. So if a stress shows up, you can just go to that, even though it has nothing to do with the current situation, just go to what you're grateful for. But Dr. John DeMartini is a brilliant thought leader in chiropractic. And he said it's even more powerful if you can do something called equanimity. And so what he means by that is the very thing that you're being stressed by, if you can find something grateful in that, that's even more powerful. So maybe the gratefulness is, I learned what I don't want to do. I'm grateful for that. It can be as simple as that. So these are the things that you want to start doing. And then the next category is sleep. We need to stop doing the things that are tanking our immune system around sleep. We are the only species on the planet that voluntarily puts off sleep, procrastinates on sleeping. Every other species on the planet, unless they're being chased, when it's time to sleep, they find a way to go and sleep. So we have to honor that circadian rhythm that when the sun goes down, it's time for us to start thinking about going to sleep. And we want to have, we want to shoot for those 8 hours of sleep. That's what the science tells us. Now, maybe if you're a little bit older, you can get away with 7.5 hours. If you're a teenager, you need 9 or 10. So getting the amount of sleep that we do need. And one of the biggest factors of people procrastinating on going to sleep is their screens. That is the biggest factor these days of people just staying on their screens way too long. And that blue light is stimulating your eyes and your pineal gland and triggering your body to think it's daylight, it's daytime, it's time to be awake. So having an e-fast, so that means getting those screens out of your eyes at least 30 minutes before bedtime, ideally even 90 minutes for some people. And I do a whole workshop on the best practices for sleep. We do that in October every year, so it's a ways away, but we've got a recording if you want to go investigate that right now. Now, the other thing that can interfere with sleep besides the screens is our thoughts. Our thoughts where we're worrying about things or just going over and over and over the things that we're stressed about. So when that is happening to me, I have a simple ritual that I use. It's called the 4-2-1 rule, the 4-2-1 process. And I think of 4 things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes I don't even get through all of them and I go right to sleep. But if I do get through all 4 things that I'm grateful for, then I go to 2 things that I love, 2 things that I just love. And sometimes it's, I love my bed. So comfortable. It's my sleeping sanctuary. Once I've gone through the 2 things I love, if there's still something troubling me, then I go to that one thing that I could use a little help with this thing. And then I just offered up that I'm looking for some help and let it go. And that oftentimes is all that I need to just help me get to sleep if I've been thinking. So I'd like to invite you to try that out for yourselves. Now, some people try to use alcohol thinking it's going to help them relax and help them sleep. And although it may help you pass out, alcohol-induced sleep is not going to be healing sleep. So you're actually going to rob yourself of good, healthy sleep if you're using, depending on alcohol, to get you to sleep. And the same thing is true of sleep medications. They don't allow you to have the good healing sleep that your body actually needs. So again, stop with the screens, stop with the stress, stop with the booze, and start working towards those 8 hours of sleep. The most important ones, the highest quality, is going to be the time you're sleeping from 11 to 2. 11 to 1, 11 to 2. You want to have that deep sleep at that time. So going to bed, so you're laying down and closing your eyes around 10. After about an hour, you're going to be moving into that deep, deep sleep where you want to be from 11 until about 2. If you can get really good deep sleep during that time, that's the most important quality of time that you want to have that sleep. Now, sometimes people have projects and they just got to get that project done, or you're a student and you're studying, you got to put the hours in for studying, and you already know you're going to be minimizing the amount of hours you have. The best practice would be actually to try to get, if you're only going to get 4 hours, try to get those 4 hours between 10 and 2. and then just wake up at 2, get yourself up at 2 and go do your studying then, because then you'll get more value. The quality of your sleep will be better at that time. Create a,
Dr. Heather,
yeah,
are we allowed to ask questions or do we wait till the end?
you can ask a question right now if it's part of what we're talking about. Yeah.
So to your point about age then, is this true like all the way through this 11 to 2, like if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s?
It is true that the best quality is still going to be at that time because that's based on a circadian rhythm that every human has to obey, that circadian rhythm. So,
So
but 7.5 hours may be all that you need, but
yeah,
you want to try to make sure that
those
it includes that.
those four. So whether
Yeah.
you're in, and so people who are night owls, because I mean, I know, and I've talked about it. I've been trying to switch mine just recently, and I actually to this morning I woke up at 5:30 and I was delighted. I was so smug when I went into work because I'd already done like 3 hours, right? I like to be those sort of I understand why my colleagues look at me now and they're early risers and they do that before me. So
Yeah.
that was funny. But my mom goes to bed at 3 or 4 and sleeps till 10. So she's not getting 11 to 2. She's in her 80s and she's like, I'm a night owl. I'm a night owl. So
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is it's just lifestyle and her telling herself this is what is driving it. And to
That's
really
true.
try to, okay,
And it's difficult to change. You can't flip that just like, okay, tonight I'm going to go to bed at 8.
right.
It won't work. The way to address that is if she goes to bed at 3, she needs to
Mm,
go to bed at 2:45 and
okay.
then do that for a couple of days and then 2:30 for a
Yep.
couple of days and then 2:15. She's
Yep.
going to walk that one down the stairs. That's the only way that's going to be successful because otherwise she's going to go to bed early and she's just going to lie there.
Exactly. And then
Yeah,
and then she doesn't think it works. So to your point, give it the time, give it the glide path, and
that's
then
right.
see if then the quality of the day is better because of those core hours of 11 to 2.
Yep.
So those 3 hours, right?
Uh, well, it's the going to sleep at 10 so that you're
Okay.
deeply
Yeah.
asleep from 11 to 1
Okay.
or 2. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah. So, and creating a sleep sanctuary is going to be part of that too. So, that sleep sanctuary, if you've got the TV in the bedroom, well, that's not a sleep sanctuary. If you've got, if you're doing office work in bed, that is not a sleep sanctuary. So, make sure your bedroom is the place where you go to sleep and have it be pitch dark, like no little digital lights here or there, alarm clock showing, like dark. That's a sleep sanctuary. Sleep surface. What kind of bed should you sleep on? So I do love the sleep number beds because you can change the hardness of it and the softness so it's going to be just right for you. And it may change that there may be times when you want it a little softer or you want it a little firmer. So I do love the sleep number beds. I've had one for about 30 years and I've had to just change out a few parts that wore down a little bit, but it was like $50 every few years. And I'm still got the same bed. So you can't say that for most beds that they won't last that long. So I do love those sleep number beds. But you'll find your own bed that's going to be best for you. Some people do like the Tempur-Pedic because of the molding aspect of it. There are some very sophisticated beds that you can get. The BioPosture is a brand that's an amazing, very sophisticated bed, similar to Sleep Number, but at a higher level. So the sleep surface is going to be important. And even the temperature in the room, 60 degrees is the optimum temperature. So on the cooler side is better to get the best sleep possible. And again, just I will refer you to my my sleep workshop that we do, and then you can really get all the lowdown on that. Diet style. What do we need to stop doing? Toxic foods. The reason why toxic foods are so bad, they're doubly bad because not only do they come with putting toxins into you, but they're taking the place of the foods that have the nutrients. So the toxic foods are going to lead to deficiencies at the same time. And so things with additives and preservatives and, good news, the US just banned red dye number 4, whatever it is, right? Finally, even though we've known for years that it was not good to have in our food. And so we're moving in the right direction here, but we still have to use the smart part of our brains to read the labels ourselves. We need to be the ones that are responsible, not the government. We want the government to stop making it too easy for us to eat toxic foods, but it's still up to us to do that. So stopping all those toxic foods, stopping the added sugar that is put in a lot of these foods. Again, it's just going to tank your immune system. There was actually a study that showed that just having one glass of orange juice, it collapsed the innate immune response for at least 5 hours, and for some people up to 12 hours. So, and it's just because the juice is actually a sugar bomb that you're eating. Instead of eating the orange, when you eat orange juice, it's a sugar bomb. So the added sugar definitely need to, that's a dragon to slay, and it is worth it to do the work to stop that. And stop starving yourself, because when you're starving yourself, then you go into a stress response and you're just going to eat whatever's in front of you, and you won't be able to make good decisions because your prefrontal cortex stops and you're just making decisions from that reptilian brain that just wants to get any food at all in, doesn't matter how bad it is. So don't starve yourself, but yet there's a difference between fasting and starving. So when you starve yourself, sometimes you could actually be just eating empty calories with crappy, no nutrients in them, and you're actually starving yourself, even though you're putting in lots of calories. And you're putting in all those calories, and you're going to want more and more of those calories because there's no nutrients in that food. So you feel like you're starving, even though you're eating. So that's important, that the quality of the food you're eating is key. You want to eat nutrient-dense food. And so that's going to typically be organic versions of food, regenerative agriculture food, where the soil is so rich with the minerals. That is the food that our ancestors would have been eating when they picked up something. Nowadays, it takes 50 peaches to get the same nutrients that you would have gotten from 2 peaches 50 years ago. So we've depleted our soils. Our growing practices are not healthy, so we're not getting the nutrient density in the food. So when it comes to fasting, it's another tool that you can use. And I do, again, more information about that. It's a fantastic tool to use, actually, and I highly recommend it. But again, we go into more detail with that in other workshops. But the key thing here is not starving yourself so you're out of control and then just not paying attention to what you're eating. That's what I mean by that. And you want to start hydrating your body. Make sure you're getting the good, healthy water in. Hydration is so important because our body needs water for all the different reactions that it has in the body. And if you're not taking in enough water, your body has to then produce a mucus of its own to serve as that vehicle that the water would have provided. And so we'll get more mucusy. And you know that when you're challenging in your immune system, you've already got enough mucus coming out. The last thing you want is to just be doing things that are going to lead to more and more mucus. So hydration is key here. And then a diet style, part of that is like what the rhythm is that you're eating, and also what are the foods that you're eating. So a paleo diet is the one that we were designed for 40,000 years ago. The Weston A. Price Foundation does a great job of helping to teach us what our healthy ancestors were eating. Even if we were eating grains, how were we eating those grains? In a healthy way, eating fermented foods, eating the healthy animal foods that are there for us. Those are the diet styles that I like to recommend people explore. And supplementation actually may be part of your diet style, especially as a bridge if you haven't actually got the right diet down yet, to make sure you have the nutrients that you do need. So let's take a look and unpack these a little bit. What does a paleo diet look like? It's going to be unlimited vegetables, abundant, lean, natural meats, some fruits, nuts, and seeds, limited starch, and no sugar. Now, a little bit of honey now and then could all be awesome, because our ancestors, if they ever found a honey tree, like they might have just gorged on that honey for the day, and that was what they ate. But it wouldn't be very often, and they'd be suffering some bee stings in the process, but it might be worth it. So all in all, a paleo correct diet is going to look something like this. And there's so much delicious food that we can be eating here. So again, this is the way you want to be thinking. When you look at your plate, you want to be asking, where are the plants, where are the healthy fats, and where are the healthy proteins? That's the key to it. Now, in the category of supplementation, specifically regarding your immune system, this is what the research shows us. Vitamin A, so key. Like, the big measles epidemic scare they're talking about. It is well known that you just dose somebody with good vitamin A for a couple of days, good strong amounts of vitamin A, that takes care of measles. So measles may be more of a vitamin A deficiency sign than it is a contagious illness. Certainly, it seems to be very contagious, but again, contagious and dangerous are two different things. Something can be very contagious and not dangerous. And it's not going to be dangerous if you have those superpowers expressing themselves with your immune system the way it was designed to work. Vitamin C can be important. And I'll tell you what, the more grains that you're eating, the more sugar that you're eating, the more vitamin C you're going to need because you use up vitamin C trying to process those sugars. Vitamin D and vitamin K, so important. Nobel Prize winning for vitamin D. And some people think of vitamin D for strong bones, but actually, vitamin D got the Nobel Prize because its role in immune system function. So it is essential. And, we're doing this webinar from Vermont. It's February. I've never come across a single Vermonter in the more than 30 years that I've been here that has not had low vitamin D levels if they didn't supplement because that sun just goes too low in the sky in the winter. We're not getting any vitamin D from the sun in the wintertime here at these latitudes. So vitamin D and vitamin D works synergistically with vitamin K. And again, so important for our immune system function to have that vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K. Magnesium also so important. And magnesium actually is used up a lot from stress and the modern lifestyle. In fact, 5G and EMF radiation from wireless and Bluetooth and all of that we're surrounded with more and more. Yeah, one of the protective factors is taking in a lot of magnesium for that. So especially magnesium malate, it seems the research shows is the big one there. So making sure you have a lot of magnesium is important. Many people are deficient in magnesium. Selenium is important also. It's important for your thyroid function and many other functions with your immune system. Zinc and quercetin, they oftentimes are working together again to help with immune system function. Probiotics, but also prebiotics. Prebiotics are the food to feed the probiotic strains that are in your gut. So if you just take in probiotic supplements or probiotic foods, but you're not including the food that those healthy bugs need to proliferate and to establish themselves and stabilize in the gut, then you're not going to be actually developing the diversity that you need in the microbiome. So oftentimes, if you're not eating the diet that is rich in those probiotic foods, those fermented live enzyme foods, then you will want to use a supplement of a probiotic, again, because 80% of our immune system is in our gut. But I prefer people don't rely on probiotics just all the time, that instead you're just getting that diversity from your diet. Fish oil. Fish oil is the universal antidote to inflammation because our diets have so much imbalance in omega-3s and omega-6s that it just blasts the inflammation. It's like pouring kerosene on the fire of inflammation. So fish oil is the antidote to that helps to just put that fire out. Iodine, again, important for the thyroid function and also for our immune system. Many people are iodine deficient simply because the soil that our food is grown in just doesn't really have that iodine anymore in it. And so supplementation may be important for people in certain areas. And then there are ways to, if you do have leaky gut, to help to restore that gut. So I bring people through a whole protocol of weeding and seeding and feeding the healthy gut microbiome and healing and sealing that gut. But one product that is especially promising is it's called Ion Gut Restore, Ion Biome. And it literally can actually help to heal leaky gut, those tight junctions, and making them strong again. I also find Conjuplex and Andrographis for upper respiratory types of immune challenges that we have this time of the year. Oftentimes You pound yourself with that when you're feeling that challenge, it can help you to move through that by just providing all the building blocks that your body needs when that immune system is running strong like that. So those are the supplement recommendations for bulletproofing your immune system. This is just some research that showed that even with COVID, these were some of the things that people had the best results with. So again, those ones that we have always known have been useful for the immune system, for viral kinds of things that we're exposed to: vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium, all of those things. Another study showed dramatic differences in vitamin D levels and how it played out for the mortality rates. So people that had severe deficiencies were twice as likely to have severe complications, including death. And on the other hand, people that had robust levels of vitamin D were the ones that cruised right through COVID and didn't have the bad outcomes. And then again, with COVID, we did find pretty early on that quercetin helped to improve the zinc uptake, and then the zinc was really good for addressing that viral load. Again, the gut microbiota. Again, this is the research. So depletion of the microorganisms in the gut did lead to severe outcomes with COVID. So if you had dysbiotic gut microbiota, you were going to see the long COVID happening, and that kind of thing. So bolstering the gut species, that was the thing that really helped people move through COVID in a much healthier way. So managing the gut microbiota, again, another great strategy, because we know our gut is our superpower, but we need to take care of it properly. All right, how about movement? Stop being sedentary. Stop being a couch potato. Get to move your body more. So stop the sedentary lifestyle. Stop the macro traumas of injuring yourself, slips and falls on the ice, car accidents, sports injuries. Stop banging yourself up, concussions. Stop that. But also stop the micro trauma. What do I mean by that? Well, certainly we can have slips and falls, and we can have an injury from that. But the micro trauma from use of screens and devices with poor posture. I mean, some people might have been more concerned about these people are not 6 feet apart. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned that their posture is going to be impacting their immune system. And really, it seems like a little thing, but I promise you that postural piece has a big impact on immune system function. And I want to show you why. When we have ongoing stresses, whether it's from all three dimensions, thoughts, toxins, and traumas, or macro traumas, slips and falls, we couple that together with this ongoing postural stress, and it leads to something called subluxation, misalignments of the vertebrae that start to interfere with the flow of messages in the body. So we talked about how there were the 4 components that we were going to address, and the 5th one is the one that controls everything. So our nervous system is what controls everything in our body. And if we have subluxations, we're misaligning the vertebrae, and we're going to start to interfere with the flow of messages through the nervous system. And we do know that when you have subluxations, misalignments of the joints, it actually leads to muscle spasms and joint fixation. And now the brain loses track of what's happening in those joints, and it goes into a stress response, because the brain has to know exactly where the body is in space if it's going to move that body around and go get food. That's the purpose of the brain. Move the body around so you can go get food and experience a human having a body on the planet. That's the purpose of the brain, is to move the body. But in order to move the body, you have to know where the body is, and you have to know what's happening in the environment, and then how you move through that environment. So the brain needs to have a very clear neural self-image of where the body is. And if there's anything distorted or vague about that, then the brain's going to go into a stress response. So when we have subluxations, the information that flows through the nervous system becomes more vague and distorted. And now by the time it gets to the brain does not have a clear idea of what's happening. And so then it will go actually into a higher cortisol level. Higher stress hormones flood the body. And when we have high stress hormones, we turn the stress switch off. I mean, we turn the healing switch off and the stress switch is going on. So it will alter our immune system function. And so our spine is the suit of armor that's protecting our nervous system because our nervous system is the most important system in the body. Our nervous system is basically comprised of the brain sending messages down through the spinal cord, out through the nerves to go to every part of the body and back again. As long as there's no interference, then you get to be healthy. Because where are these nerves going? Well, some of the nerves coming out of the neck are going to go to all of these areas, your eyes and structures of the head, your lungs, your heart, your stomach, your liver, your intestines, and then all the way down the bottom of the spine, those nerves are going out to the bladder, the reproductive organs, and the bowels. All the nerves coming out in the middle of the spine are going, oh, where are they going? Up to the structures of the head, to the lungs, the heart, the stomach, the liver, everywhere again. So all of our organ systems are being controlled by our nervous system. And our nervous system has to pass through the spine to get from the brain to the body and back again. So as long as we have no interruptions between the brain and the body, then the brain knows exactly what's going on very clearly and can send messaging out very specifically to those organs and cells to tell them what to do. If we have any disturbance in the flow of messages, we're going to start to see a breaking down of function in the body. And the most dangerous part about the subluxations is that you don't always feel them. You can have interruptions and disturbances in those flow of messages without feeling them. And here's why. When we look at the role of the nervous system, when we think of pain, pain would be something that would tell us, oh, there's something wrong there. I have to do something about it. Well, of our sensory nerves that feel pain, that only makes up, out of the entire nervous system, only 7% of the nervous system actually feels pain. The other 93% is running the function, so we won't feel it. So you can have subluxations and never feel them, and they could be affecting your function. And what kind of function could they affect? Well, the muscle function, but also the organ function. Sinuses, allergies, low energy, digestive problems, breathing problems, those can all be the outcome of having a disturbed flow of messages in the nervous system. And when we go into that stress response, once again, our immune response is going to tank. We're going to downregulate that immune system. So remember, stress is like kryptonite. It's the thing that is going to create weakness in the body. And that is because it's affecting the nervous system. So what we want to start doing when it comes to movement, right? We want to stop subluxating ourselves and we want to start moving. So the key things for movement are we want to have exertion. We actually do want burst exertion exercise. Like think of when you were a kid and you played tag. You ran as fast as you could and then you caught your breath. And then you ran as fast as you could and then you caught your breath. So burst exertion, panting, sweating exercise is what we mean when we say exertion. And that means not just going for the walk that you do all the time, that your body is so used to that you don't even break a sweat, that you don't even have to pant, you can talk the whole way. You want to get to the point where you're exercising so you can't talk because you're working so hard and breathing so hard. That's what exertion is. So panting, sweating exercise is what we mean by exertion. And you'll recognize that somebody that's out of shape, it won't take much for them to get panting and sweating and not being able to talk as they exercise. Someone who's really fit, they're going to have to push themselves a lot harder. But that's the key. No matter what level of fitness you're in, you want to be going through that panting, sweating exercise. The second thing about starting is the ergonomics. Make sure that if you are going to be on screens, whether it's the handheld devices or the monitors, that you have really good ergonomics so you're taking care of your posture while you're using those screens. And then getting your spine checked for subluxations. So this is key because you don't always feel whether you have subluxations. It's not going to be dependent on, oh, I've got neck pain or back pain, and now I know I have subluxations. You can have these short circuits in your nervous system without feeling them. So you do need to have somebody checking you to see whether or not you have subluxations that could be tanking your immune system function, pushing you towards immunocompromise. And finally, the impact of fitness or fatness with COVID. They literally did find that the state of physical activity was one of the biggest factors And they said it's the tale of two pandemics. So that pandemic came through, affecting everybody, contagious to everybody, but only dangerous to certain people. The people that were already in the habit of having fitness, they tended to cruise right through. The people that were experiencing fatness because they were more sedentary and they didn't have a good rhythm of exercise, they were the people that had the worst prognosis. So this is the research that we had. This is right from the Mayo Clinic that we had very early on. All right, now speaking of moving your body, and by the way, 70% lower risk of hospitalization if you were actually more fit compared to the ones that were experiencing more fatness. So healthy living, pandemic event protection, HL pivot, right? Its goal was to get everybody moving to build health in everybody so that they were not at risk because they had chronic diseases, which put them at greater risk of viral infections. So here's a great exercise that I want everybody to be doing twice a day. We call it the life extension exercises, and we use the acronym You Will Love This, YWLT. So the first one is Y. Everybody do it with me. I can't see you, but I'm going to trust you're doing it. Arms go up in a Y shape and stretch them right up. And then you're going to take, about 20 seconds in each position. So taking a few breaths in that position. The W is trying to put your elbows down into your back pocket and you hold that position. The L is the elbows are bent and your hands are just spread out to the side. So your scapula in behind you are pinching together. And then finally, the T, where you're stretching your arms out straight to either side. You will love this, YWLT, life extension exercises. If you brush your teeth twice a day, that extends the longevity of your teeth. If you want to have a healthy spine and you want it to last a long time, then you got to have spinal hygiene as well. And this is one of those exercises that's going to be great for that. Now, finally, I've got you moving a little bit. That gets your brain focusing again. And I want to just tell you the story of Masha and Dasha because it's extraordinary. It's a curious example of Masha and Dasha. So Masha and Dasha were Siamese twins, and they were born in the Soviet Union. And when they were born, they just thought, oh my gosh, we got to just observe these twins and how do they evolve and what happens in their life to be joined at the hips. So they shared a bloodstream. They had separate spinal cords that came and separate spinal columns that came together, and then they shared the pelvis. And then they had, one leg was controlled by one side of them, one leg controlled by the other side of them. The thing that was extraordinary about Masha and Dasha is that one of them had the measles and one of them didn't. But they shared a bloodstream. They shared a bloodstream, which means that the measles virus they were both exposed to it. It was flowing through their circulatory system, both of them, but only one of them actually got the measles. And the one that got the measles was the one that was bent a little bit more off to the side than the other one. So perhaps their spinal function was not quite as good as the other one, and that may have been more susceptible to becoming symptomatic with that. And there were a few other things that were different about them. And the one that was more robust was the one that actually had that spine that was less crooked. That is the curious example of Masha and Dasha. So do viruses actually cause disease? They prove to us that it may not work the way we think it does, and that we may not need to be afraid of these viruses. We just need to rely on the superpowers that we have in our immune system that we were born with. We just have to optimize. Chronic sinus infections. So these are just some stories from people in my practice. Elaine was somebody that had chronic sinus infections when she came into the office, and she actually, she went through a lot. In 2016, she started care because she had headaches and neck pain. Didn't mention the chronic sinus infections, but as she started to get adjusted, we realized, through further investigation, she also struggled with allergies, asthma, eczema, sinus infections. So her immune system was tanked. And yet each year she had she got better, and we helped her to improve her lifestyle changes year after year. She was getting better and better, getting her nervous system clear. And so by 2018, she was much more robust, but she suddenly had this very strange condition show up. Idiopathic, meaning we don't know why it's there, thrombocytopenic purpura. And it was where her skin had this blotchiness to it because the blood vessels were there was disturbance in the blood vessels, and they didn't know what caused it, and they didn't know what was going to fix it, but it normalized within a few months, and then she just remained stable after that. And her doctor said, I don't know what you did, but it's amazing that after a few months it just normalized. Then in 2019, she said her sinuses were the clearest they had ever been. That was in 2019. You know, it was coming down the pike, right? COVID was going to be arriving at the end of that year, right into 2020. And that year of 2019, she literally said it was the best pollen season she ever had. She was able to do yard work and housework with plenty of stamina when she saw people around us that they were dropping. And yet in February 2020, she said she was breathing the best that it has ever been. So that was her own testimonial. And again, we worked with her over the years to get her healthier and healthier, to build up those superpowers and get her bulletproof so that when that badass virus came to town, she was bulletproof for it. I had seniors that did not get sick the entire season. Seniors that usually, when they used to travel a lot, they would always get colds and flu from their travel. And then when they got into care over time, that just didn't happen anymore. And some of them, their allergies completely went away as well. So again, another part of the immune system function. So how do you know if you have a subluxation? Well, you need to get checked. And so the way that we check for subluxations is we use motion palpation, meaning we feel the spine. We feel if there's any area where there may be some static palpation, where it's fixated, where it's locked up. We also will check posture and make sure that that posture is, that head is right up over the shoulders, instead of the way we find a lot of people with bad posture, the head is carried forward, and that puts so much stress on the nervous system. We might use x-rays to look at whether there's any degenerative changes that have gotten a start, kind of tells us how long their subluxations have gone uncorrected. And then the instrumentation literally is showing us where the nerves that control certain parts of the immune system may be getting compromised. We literally can measure that. And so when we measure that, we use thermal scans, for example. That tells us how well the nervous system is controlling the organs and the tissues and the circulation in the body. So a normal, healthy thermal scan is going to look like this on the left, where everything is in the white. But when we start to see color, those are the areas that there's nerve irritation, that there's nerve interference. And if we know what the map of the nervous system is, which I already showed you, you'll know then, if you studied it closely, that like this area of the spine, this is where the nerve supply goes to the spleen, one of the major immune organs. Up in this area, that T4-5, that can affect the thymus gland, again, a major immune system organ. And then we have nerves that'll go out to the bone marrow. Again, this is where a lot of our immune system happens. And of course, the digestive system and the gut is part of that. And that's the nerve supply to the gut. And that can interfere with immune system function in that way as well. So when we have that, and then we have many other ways that we are measuring the nervous system. So if you're curious on whether or not you have subluxations and how that might be affecting your immune system, then we'd like to invite you to come to the office and we can see if we can help. And if you'd like to even just simply set up a call with me and we can talk through what your challenges are, what your goals are, and we can see how we can help with that. We can start with that if you'd like. And remember, I was going to be talking about the third reason why we have the healthcare crisis that we have. We talked about personal responsibility. We talked about people's lowering their expectations around what health was. Procrastination is that third one that the research showed was actually the one that could have the biggest impact. Like, people know that they shouldn't be sedentary. They know they shouldn't eat that toxic food, and they just haven't gotten around to it, right? Like your Cheryl, like your mom, like Oh, I know I should sleep differently. I'm a night owl. Oh, I'll get around to it. And here she is, decades later, still hasn't gotten around to it. So procrastination is the thief of health. So I want you all to be action oriented. I want you to think about what are the action steps you're going to take on what you've learned tonight so you can bulletproof your immune system. And if you do have subluxations, if you don't know, you've got to find out. So how do you know if you have subluxations? You've got to get checked. And if you don't know, if you're not under care and you're watching this recording or you're a guest on the webinar here, we would invite you, please just send us a text to our office, 802-985-9850. You can put in the word bulletproof if you want, or I want to get checked. You can leave us a message, whatever it is. And then that way my team will connect you and get you into my schedule. And if you'd like to start by just having a phone call together, I'm happy to do that. But if you do want to get scheduled to get checked, then oftentimes we do have some specials that are running that also make it more affordable. And right now we do have one. So if you're interested, you should definitely contact us right away so that you can get in on that special. So again, I want to finish up with just a story because stories really do help us to grasp ideas. And there was a family, and in their family, they had a tradition that however many candles you had, which were the years old that you were, that you got that many wishes. And so, if you were 10 years old, you'd get 10 wishes and you would share what your wishes were with the rest of the family. And so one year, the dad, he turned 40. So he had 40 candles and he had 40 wishes. And it was so much fun just sharing 40 different things that he was wishing for. And then the next year, he turned 41. And although there were 41 candles on that cake, he only had one wish that year because that year he had gotten cancer. And his only wish was that he had his health back. So when we talk about bulletproofing your immune system, I'm not kidding. It affects your entire life. And so if you can actually do those action steps that are going to move you towards, and it's progress, not perfection. It's just doing those incremental things that are just keep moving you towards that level of health that you want, that robustness that you want. You're going to have to go against our culture because our culture is designed to push us away from health. And so you have to be smart and you have to be disciplined and you can do it and it's worth it. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. I promise you. So that the wish I have for you is that you have as many wishes as you want, that you're excited about life, that you have that health and robustness so you can do anything that you want. It's not holding you back. So thank you so much for your time and attention, that you have not just one wish. My one wish for you is that you have many wishes and that you have the health that you want. So please reach out to us if you would like to, if you have any questions or you want to have any conversation, we do welcome you to reach right out and we do respond. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time and attention. And we are going to end our recording, leaving you inspired to go take those action steps.